Darkest Dungeon 2 is a hard game to love at times. As with its predecessor, love and hate spin on the same strange axis, but it's ultimately up to you to decide if the eventual triumph is worth the tribulation it takes to get there. This isn't really a sequel so much as it's a complete revamp of the original game's formula. You'll navigate each roguelike region node to node. If you fail, it's back to the start to spend your candles to make the next attempt easier. Despite any criticisms I may have, however, version 1.0 is definitely the strongest overall iteration of the game so far. Your typical run of Darkest Dungeon 2 lasts a couple of hours, which you spend fighting battles and piloting your coach through hazards. Besides navigating obstacles, you spend your time strengthening heroes and grabbing trinkets, removing negative quirks at hospitals, and acquiring new abilities from Shrines of Reflection. Each region also has its own lair boss to defeat that rewards you with a trophy, opening your way to the mountain at the end of a run. It's a fun tactical experience on the whole, but it can border on being a bit of a slog at times. Darkest Dungeon 2 is a time-hungry game, both in terms of how long it takes to complete a run and the investment required to gather candles. Darkest Dungeon 2 wants you to reach a point where you have every character, ability, and path unlocked. And I bet it's a lot of fun to randomize your party and experiment with roles and ranks, or just pick whoever has the best quirks at the start of a run and go from there. That said, the sheer groundwork required to reach that point in terms of persistent progression is a big time commitment, and not one I'm convinced the game's 5 regions and nodes can necessarily bear the weight of, no matter how many times they're recombined. Darkest Dungeon 2's combat is far stronger than the first game though, made flashier with new 3D animations and easier to understand via tokens. Red Hook also does justice to its returning roster of heroes and their movesets, though reimagined to be a bit more rank flexible, and with the addition of paths, it's quite easy to pick up where you left off with most of them in the first game, and strong heroes like the Plague Doctor are still an absolute force to be reckoned with. Still, Darkest Dungeon 2 does lack the same level of character investment that its predecessor had. One of the things that made the original so good was that your greatest victory was often a hair's breadth from your most crushing defeat, as you risked your beloved high-level heroes to overcome the ultimate challenge. It's easy to appreciate what Darkest Dungeon 2 is though, a gloomy road trip through a dying world bolstered by excellent combat and art design, even though I think it feels like a somewhat conflicted game in terms of wanting players to experiment but requiring significant progression in order to enable it. There's a lot of fun to be had riding your stagecoach into hell, fighting battles tooth and nail, and enjoying the nightmarish scenery and mood. It's definitely not as obsession-inducing as the first game, but there's still plenty to love, especially for those who enjoy the setting and will get a kick out of seeing it further fleshed out.